Hi there, good morning. You're watching Market Cafe on ET Now with me, Snehisha, and as usual, I have my co-anchor with me, Shreyansi Singh. Shreyansi, wishing you a very good morning, and seems to be a good morning for our implied open as well. A 150-point uptick is what's penciled in on the spot basis. Remember, we closed below 25,000 yesterday, and looking good as of now, at least on the implied open. But remember, this also comes on the back of a very strong handover, especially coming from Wall Street. So, Shreyansi, take us through everything that we saw on Wall Street today, because what a stellar recovery.
Well, absolutely very interesting moves, and good morning to you, Snehi. Well, let's take a look at the Wall Street and let's see what happens, because investors are largely coming off a choppy session after a late day advance in tech shares is something that helped the major benchmarks rebound from their lows. So strong day coming in, like Snehi mentioned, and the S&P 500 ended the day higher by over 1%, even after falling more than 1% on an intraday basis as well. A first for the broader index since October 2022 as well. Now, at the same time, you did have a 30 stock Dow, and that is the one that gained about 0.3% thereabout after losing as much as 743 points earlier in the session. So quite the recovery that the Dow Jones staged there. When you take a look at the Nasdaq as well, you're looking at a close of 2% higher, making a comeback there as well from a decline of more than 1%. So quite the recovery there as well. Now, stocks dropped earlier in the day, of course, when August's consumer price index showed an uptick in core inflation, which excludes volatile food and energy prices. Now, the reading, of course, spooked investors hoping for a half percentage point cut from the Federal Reserve at its September 17th to 18th meeting. So that is something that we were keeping in focus, and that is something that weighed on stocks just a little bit. But then after that, you did see that recovery coming in for Wall Street. Now, of course, Wall Street is anticipating the release of the August producer price index, so it's not just that one data set of core inflation that we were looking for. This week, economists, of course, polled by Dow Jones, do anticipate a rise of 0.2% last month in the headline and core readings. On the earnings front, you also have Kroger that is slated to report results before the open. So that is also something that we're keeping an eye on. So that largely is the kind of handover that we're looking at when it comes to Wall Street. Let's also take a quick look at Europe then, and European stocks were mixed. And when you take a look at DAX, you're looking at 0.3% gain coming in. FTSE as well, on the flip side, you did have a decline of about 0.2%, so not much of a move coming in. But a strong recovery is what we saw for Wall Street then.
Absolutely, and you know, equities is not the only place where we saw a strong recovery coming in. Although European market was largely mixed, we have seen some recovery coming in the oil indices as well, because you have WTI oil that's at 67.53, a 0.3% uptick coming over there. Brent has managed to cross that $70 per level at 70.89 right now, inching towards that $71 per barrel level. 0.4% uptick coming over there. But overall, in yesterday's trade, US crude oil has rebounded more than 2%, regaining some ground after prices closed at the lowest level in nearly 3 years in the previous session. Now, remember that the steep sell-off that we saw on Tuesday came after OPEC lowered its demand growth outlook for the second time in 2 months, and China crude oil imports also slowed down in 2024. You also have 8 OPEC plus members that are expected to increase production in December. Now, some traders are worried about Brent prices heading towards that $60 per barrel mark, but this level of bearishness is largely unwarranted, is what we have analysts telling us. Supply and demand fundamentals point towards stockpiles falling, so largely that is what crude is doing. Quickly also, let's keep us going with crude then, and as crude prices continue to remain under pressure, that could be a silver lining for the Indian economy, since we import almost 85% of our crude requirements. It could ease the pressure on our balance sheet and the current account deficit as well. Samit joins in to explain how. Samit.
Well, Brent crude continues to decline for the third consecutive month. In fact, in the month of September, the kind of decline that we have seen is the highest since August 2022. So why is this declining oil prices beneficial for India? Firstly, because oil remains the key source of energy for India. Nearly 85% of India's oil consumption needs are met through imports. However, India's oil intensity has declined rapidly over the past few years. For instance, if you look at when India's GDP was near $1 trillion, it was importing around 900 million barrels of oil, which is nearly 8% of the GDP. However, this has now come down to around 4% of the GDP. India's total GDP now stands at around $3.5 trillion and imports nearly 1.7 billion barrels, which is around 4% of the GDP at the current prices. Now, how does it impact inflation? Firstly, fuel has a direct weightage of around 4.4% in the CPI and a weightage of around 7.95% in the WPI, and a 10% decrease in the oil prices could lead to a reduction in the CPI and the WPI inflation by around 40 to 80 basis points. When it comes to the current account deficit, oil accounts for nearly 26.5% of the total imports and 61% of the commodity imports, and a 10% decrease in the oil prices could narrow the current account deficit by around 30 basis points. When it comes to growth, generally falling oil prices likely to have a favorable impact on the domestic growth of the country through a lower inflation, looser financial conditions and robust business sentiments. However, do remember that to realize this benefits, oil needs to continue to remain at these lower levels. Short-term fluctuations don't tend to have any major impact on the country or on the financials of any company.
Tommy, for that roundup bright and early this morning, let's also take a quick look at the global cues that you should keep on your radar. Now, of course, from the US, you do have initial jobless claims data that is on the deck and PPI data set as well. Now, from the Eurozone, there's ECB rate decision that we'll be keeping a very close eye on. And from Japan, there's PPI data set as well. Back home, of course, you do have industrial production as well as CPI data, so do keep an eye on all of that. And in terms of corporate action, there's a host of AGMs to keep an eye on. So Paytm, RITES. I'm also talking about international and Gulf oil lubricants. So those are the counters that will remain in focus on account of those AGMs. Now, in terms of corporate action, there's lots more to keep an eye on. So Nazara Technologies board will be mulling fundraise. You do also have Varun Beverages that has a stock split from face value. So that is also a very important one to watch out for. And Skipper will be trading ex-dividends, so that counter will also remain in focus. And in terms of other events, of course, you do have a very important launch from Motown. So Maruti Suzuki Swift CNG launch is the one that we're keeping an eye on, Snehi.
Absolutely. So lots to watch out for in today's trading session. But if you take a look at everything that's been happening globally, let's talk about the biggest headline that matters today, and that is the headline inflation in the United States. A 43-month low on that figure. That's a 3-year low at 2.5% for the month of August. Pricing pressures have now declined for a 5th consecutive month, and in the 12 months through August, the CPI advanced 2.5%. That was the smallest year-on-year rise since February 2021 and followed a 2.9% increase in July. However, core inflation shows some stickiness, dampening the Federal Reserve's rate cut plan this month. Now, what's left to see?
Well, absolutely. And we also caught up with Arnab Das from Invesco to talk about this and get him to weigh in on this. Listen to what he had to say then.
I guess you should never say never. 50 basis points is possible, but I think it's pretty unlikely at this stage. The market wasn't pricing 50; it was pricing, I think, more like 30 before the CPI. And I think by most accounts, including my own, the CPI, although the headline number is fine, as you say, the core number is not as good as might have been hoped, and core PCE when it comes out will probably kind of maintain that story. So I think we are looking at a 25 basis point cut. I think the Fed is focusing. It's kind of indicated, and I think it's correct to say that it's shifted the focus of its dual mandate from inflation to jobs and to the labor market. But I think it has to keep one eye on inflation.
All right, then let's keep it going with macros. The Fed Reserve's front-loading interest rate cuts to reignite a slowing U.S. economy is still a possibility. You have Goldman Sachs economist Jan Hatzius seeing a solid case for a 50 bips rate cut from the Fed, even as the markets are largely pricing in a 25 bips cut. He says, and I quote, 5 3/8, 5 1/4 to 5.5% is a really high Fed funds rate. It's the highest policy rate in the entire G10.
All right, shifting gears to Motown then, and according to market research from RowMotion, global sales of fully electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles rose by a yearly 20% in August, driven by record high sales in China, and despite a 33% drop in Europe to its weakest month since January 2023. Meanwhile, China sales are expected to rise by 1/3 from last year to 10.5 million vehicles. Remember, demand for electric cars has cooled in recent months after rising dramatically for several years as consumers wait for more affordable models or opt for hybrid alternatives.
And shifting focus then, with being featured in the Time 100 list for being an early backer of OpenAI, Vinod Khosla also had some interesting insights on how the future of OpenAI looks. We got into a conversation with him. Let's go across and listen into a slice of that chat.
AI tutors, every child can have a free tutor in their own regional language, driven by an AI who will pay more attention than a human tutor would, even if you could afford one. And it happened in 2022 when ChatGPT was released. I think we'll see a very, very exciting future here in the next immediate future as the next release of GPT-4 comes out. I think without announcing dates, it's very exciting what the capability will be.
All right, well, that's quite the interesting commentary coming in on the future of AI and what that holds for us. But time for a quick break. When we come back, we'll take a look at how the Asian markets are faring, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying tuned in. Well, as promised, let's take a look at the Asian markets then. In Asia, Pacific markets opened higher, tracking gains on Wall Street, fueled by a tech rally. So when you take a look at Japan's Nikkei on your screens, 3% uptick coming in for that one in early trade itself. Semiconductor related stocks, Tokyo Electron rose 5.2%. You did have Advantus also, that was up about 5.6%. Renesas Electron, that was 2% higher. And SoftBank Group, which owns a stake in chip designer ARM, also jumped over 6%. On the back of that, you do have Nikkei uptick of about 3% coming in for that one. Japan's producer price index also rose 2.5% on a year-on-year basis in August, less than the expected 2.8% and the 3% reported in the previous month. That is also a data set that we're keeping an eye on. But regardless of that, you do have the Nikkei that is up about 3% in trade. In South Korea, of course, you do have the Kospi that is also firmly in the green, 1.2%, 1.3% currently uptick coming in for Kospi as well. So firmly in the green is where that one is. And ASX 200, let's also take a look at that one because that is also in the green. 0.8% uptick coming in for ASX 200. When you take a look at Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also, that is also in the green, keeping it going with the flavor of the day, which is an uptick coming in for the Asian indices. So Hang Seng as well, 0.7% uptick coming in there as well. And investors will also be looking toward the release of Hong Kong's producer price index for the second quarter this afternoon. So that is also on deck, and that is something that we're keeping a very close eye on. Shanghai also in the green, and currently 0.4% uptick coming in for Shanghai as well. So Asian markets firmly in the green and a strong handover coming in for us from Asia as well. Now, yesterday, of course, we shut shop around the 24,918 levels, and currently we're looking at a good move coming in, especially with that handover with Wall Street as well as a strong handover coming in from Asia. It does look like it's going to be a good day for us in trade, Sneha.
Absolutely, looking like we might open above 25,000. Let's see if we're able to sustain above those levels. But on that note, here's a look at the lineup that we have for you today on the market. Starting at 8:50, we are going to be joined by Nishant Arya, Vice Chairman and MD at JBM Group, and Jitendra V. Adya, the President Finance at Atul Auto, to talk about the big policy push for EVs. Remember, yesterday after market hours, the government has launched and announced some policies for electric vehicles. So we'll be having a very fruitful discussion on that. Followed by that at 9:20, we'll be joined by Atul Suri, Marathon Trends, PMS, and he's going to be here to talk about how to beat the street, the stocks and sectors he's liking at the moment, and how to navigate a market as volatile as our market as of now. At 9:40, then we'll be joined by Sunil Gupta, co-founder, MD and CEO at Yota, to talk about the boom in data centers, because that's the current hot topic to talk about right now. 9:50, then Harsh Duggar, Executive Director of Federal Bank, will be joining us to talk about a potential rate cut cycle and the outlook of the entire banking industry if that happens. And at 10:20, lastly, we'll be joined by Rishi Anand, MD and CEO at Aadhar Housing Finance, to talk about the industry trends when it comes to the entire NBFC space. So lots of interesting discussions, guests and managements lined up for you today. Stay tuned to ET Now.
All right, well, that's Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying tuned in. Well, let's get you some more news and updates. And it's an ET Now news break confirmed. The centre has approved a new scheme for electric vehicles. The government has announced PM e-Drive to replace the FAME policy. In fact, my colleague Sameer Dixit is standing by on the phone line with more details. Sameer, take it away.
So that's a big development in the EV space, and this is our news break confirmed as well. On 4th of September, we informed our viewers that the government is soon going to come up with a new subsidy-based scheme, and this is going to have a new name and will have a similar sort of a structure that was earlier with FAME scheme. And on the same line, the new subsidy-based scheme that has been announced by the cabinet, the name is PM e-Drive, and this scheme is going to have a budgetary outlay of rupees 10,900 crore over a period of 2 years. Now, the important aspect of this scheme include that a budgetary allocation of rupees 3,679 crore has been laid for the subsidies or demand incentives to provide incentives to two-wheelers, electric three-wheelers, electric ambulances, and electric trucks as well. Now, this scheme aims to support roughly around 5 lakh two-wheelers, electric two-wheelers, roughly around 3.20 lakhs of two-wheelers and three-wheelers, and 14,028 electric buses. In addition to this, this scheme has expanded its wings and will now include electric trucks and electric ambulances. That's the interesting aspect of this scheme. So this scheme has allocated rupees 500 crore for the deployment of electric ambulances. Now, let me tell you that as of now, the criteria or what is going to be the parameters of electric ambulances, it has yet not been finalized, but soon it will be finalized after a consultation with the Health Ministry, Road Transport Ministry, and other important stakeholders. So 500 crore has been allocated for the electric ambulances. Now, one big part of this scheme is that rupees 4,391 crore has been allocated for the procurement of 14,000 buses by the State Public Transport Department. This scheme also covers the electric trucks, and for the electric trucks, the government has allocated a separate fund so that they can procure electric trucks, or they can encourage for the mobility of electric trucks. So that's the important aspect of this scheme. And this scheme also allocates rupees 2,000 crore for fast installation of fast charge, whether it be for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, or for the...
Okay, Sameer, thank you for joining us this morning and helping us to understand all of those details. But if you could also take us through more details, as there has been no subsidy provision for cars under the PM e-Drive scheme. So help us understand why this has happened.
Or passenger cars, it has not been a part of this scheme. What is the rationale behind it? What we are giving to understood from our sources that there has been a level of maturity, or there's a point that has been attained in the auto industry and also amongst the consumers, that they are now well informed enough to make an informed decision whether to go for an electric vehicle, electric car, or they want to go in for the traditional petrol or diesel vehicle. But now the consumers are well informed enough if they want to go in for an electric vehicle or not. So that is the rationale that government also understood. And as of now, the passenger cars are not a part of this scheme. But going forward, will it be included or not? That is yet to be clarified. And for the same, it is very likely that very soon the Minister for Heavy Industry, he will be clarifying on this aspect, whether it will be a part of not part of this scheme or not in the coming days. So that will be clarified by the government very soon.
All right, thanks Amit for joining us with that update bright and early this morning. In fact, the Information and Broadcasting Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw also clarified that there is no subsidy provision for cars under PM e-Drive scheme. Listen to what he had to say as well.
फेम 1 और फेम 2 बहुत सक्सेसफुल रही. उससे जो सीख के, उससे जो एक्सपीरियंस से जितना कुछ अनुभव हुआ, उस अनुभव के आधार पे एक नई स्कीम बनाई गई है पीएम ई ड्राइव. पीएम ई ड्राइव में कई अच्छे इनोवेशंस किए गए हैं, जैसे हाइब्रिड भी अलाउ किया गया है. साथ ही 4 व्हीलर्स केवल एम्बुलेंस ही है ना, केवल एम्बुलेंस है या कार्स भी इंक्लूडेड? केवल एम्बुलेंस है, यानी कार के लिए अलग से इसमें प्रोविजन नहीं है. इसमें कार के लिए प्रोविजन नहीं है, कंफर्म कर रहे हैं हमारे साथी अधिकारी.
All right, so that's the word coming in straight from the ministers involved. But my colleague Prakash Priyadarshi is also joining us to tell us more about the other various announcements that were announced at the cabinet meeting that took place yesterday. Lots of announcements. In fact, Prakash, help us make sense of all of these.
The Indian cabinet has taken a series of important decisions. And the first one is with regard to PM Ayushman Bharat Yojana, where the cabinet has decided to extend the benefit of Ayushman Bharat to the senior citizens aged above 70 years, a very significant development coming in. Along with that, for families presently covered under this scheme will get additional shared top-up cover up to rupees 5 lakh per year. In addition to that, the Indian cabinet has also approved rupees 12,400 crore for hydro projects across the country. The amount will be spent on enabling infrastructure for hydropower projects more than 31,000 megawatt capacity across the country. And it's very significant in a sense that hydropower companies will not have to bother about enabling infrastructure fund, and the government will provide financial support. In addition to that, the cabinet has also approved PM E-Drive scheme, which will replace famous scheme with the financial outlay of rupees 10,900 crore. The scheme will cover two-wheelers, three-wheelers, ambulance and trucks, but not four-wheelers. A very important aspect of this scheme. In addition to that, PM E-Bus Payment Security Mechanism has also been approved by the Indian Cabinet with an outlay of rupees 3,435 crore. More than 38,000 e-bus services will begin in 169 cities, and the government will ensure payment security to the bus operator. In addition to that, Gram Sadak Yojana has, for remotest villages has also been approved by the Indian Cabinet with an outlay of rupees 70,000 crore. Last but not the least, Mission Mausam scheme has also approved by the Indian Cabinet that will provide real-time information with an outlay of rupees 2,000 crore.
All right, thanks Prakash for that update coming in. So we'll come back to you because there's a lot of announcements to keep an eye on this morning. But for now, let's also listen to what Ashwini Vaishnav, the Minister of Information and Broadcasting, had to say about the Ayushman Bharat scheme then.
इस स्कीम में आज एक नया अध्याय जुड़ा है जो कि प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने कमिट किया था, एक कमिटमेंट दिया था कि 70 से अधिक आयु के सभी सीनियर सिटीजन्स को कवरेज दी जाएगी। कई फैमिलीज ऐसी हैं जो ऑलरेडी कवर्ड हैं जिसमें सीनियर सिटीजन है। ऐसी फैमिलीज में एडिशनल कवरेज, टॉप अप कवरेज 5 लाख रुपए पर एनम का रहेगा।
Okay, let's move on from that, and Prakash stays on with us. The Finance Ministry issues notification that countervailing duty or CVD will be imposed on the import of certain category of steel products. Prakash, take it away.
Yes, an important development coming in as the Finance Ministry has decided to impose countervailing duty on imports of certain category of steel products. A very significant development coming in. Countervailing duty has been imposed on imports of steel products, especially from China and Vietnam. A very significant development coming in as the industry has been approaching government for its immediate intervention as there was clear evidence of dumping from China. Therefore, industry has sought government intervention to protect the interest of domestic industry. Now, the government has decided to impose countervailing duty in a range of 11.96% to 29.88% for a period of 5 years. Along with that, imports of steel products come under welded stainless steel pipes and tube will attract a countervailing duty going forward. The Finance Ministry has issued notification which is likely to provide relief to the domestic industry.
All right, thanks Prakash. So busy day coming in for you there. But moving on then, in a move to boost rail connectivity, PM Modi is likely to flag off 10 Vande Bharat trains on September 15th. From Jharkhand, PM is also likely to flag off a 20-coach-based Vande Bharat train that will also run between New Delhi and Varanasi. In fact, Sameer Dikshit is standing by again with some more details. Sameer, tell us a little more about this as well then.
In a move to enhance rail connectivity across the country, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is likely to flag off not just one or two, but 10 Vande Bharat train on 15th of September. Sources have informed that in a mega event that is likely to take place on 15th September at Jamshedpur in Jharkhand, Prime Minister Modi will be flagging off 10 Vande Bharat train that will run on important routes like Gaya-Havda, Agra Kent, Banaras, Pune, Hubli. So there are 10 important routes where these Vande Bharat train will start its commercial run. Not just these 10 Vande Bharat train, but Prime Minister is also likely to flag off a 20-coach based Vande Bharat train, and that will run between New Delhi and Varanasi. So that's a big development taking place in the Indian railway sector. And with these 10 Vande Bharat train, or specifically 11 Vande Bharat train, this will enhance rail connectivity in important states like Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal. So this will also help IRCTC, the ticketing generating PSU of railways, that they will help to increase its revenue base through the reserved ticketing, with these Vande Bharat trains getting add-on in the railway network. As of 31st of August 2024, 54 Vande Bharat trains are running on track, but with the addition of these 11 Vande Bharat trains, the numbers is definitely to go up beyond 60. Railways is aiming to take the numbers up to 100 very soon, and in the same direction, production of Vande Bharat train is also slated, and it is taking place in a fast manner. And very soon, sleeper-based Vande Bharat train is also to come on tracks by December this year itself.
Okay, thank you so much for all of those details, Samir. But we also caught up with an exclusive chat with IBM's General Manager Mukesh Khare on India's future in the semiconductor industry. Let's go across and listen in.
It's very important that India must have indigenous products as well. And we from IBM are very, very thrilled that we will be providing whatever is needed in terms of intellectual property, for microprocessors or AI chip in support of the application that L&T is trying to develop from those IP.
So let me also get in your thoughts about India's chip policy, the kind of subsidies that the government is giving. Of course, the IT minister was stating that the government is looking at coming up with a new policy as well. But as an industry stakeholder, what kind of support or policy support do you think the industry and the ecosystem needs as of now?
I think you use a very important word, ecosystem. Semiconductor is all about ecosystem. First of all, I want to commend Indian government for being so bold in starting to really take actions. I've been in semiconductor industry for almost 30 years now.
I want to ask you about where do you see India in the overall chips race, because we are also seeing competition building up in Southeast Asian countries, in the United States as well, wherein they have a CHIPS Act as well. So where do you see India in the overall scheme of things so far as the semicon industry is concerned?
Okay. Well, I'm also honored that I'm also advising US government on US CHIPS Act. I think India and US or other countries are in a very different league. India is just getting started.
Right, well, that was an exclusive conversation for you right there. And it's semiconductor stocks that have been in the spotlight on account of those gains that we've seen coming in for some of those. Renesas Electronics, that was 2% higher as well. In fact, we also caught up with the Japanese company's management as well. Vivek Bhanu shares the company's plans to expand local partnerships and how they plan to build products in India for the world as well. Listen into what they had to say then.
We see opportunities for our products from automotive, from industrial, from consumer, having very good growth sectors and applications within the Indian market. We have technologies in Renaissance on compute, on analog, on power, connectivity that we can bring to the Indian market for different kind of solutions. We are also looking to partner with local suppliers in India so that we can enhance the systems we bring to India with Renaissance products. As far as CG Power is concerned, yes, we did a partnership with them. We are committed to that, to bring assembly and test and be part of the supply chain through India.
But are you also committed to deepening your investments into the country, as it were? And what really enthuses you about the Indian semiconductor ecosystem?
Very, very good question. So, as I said, we're very excited about India. We are growing in India in multiple locations. We have teams in Bangalore, We have teams in Hyderabad, we have teams in Pune, and we just built a new team in Noida. These teams have a combination of sales for growing the local business in India, but also have a lot of R&D, research and development happening within these different sectors. And we are building teams in India, investing in India, not only for products in India, but also building products within these teams in India for the global market.
Okay, on that note, we'll slip into a very short break on this edition of Market Cafe. More stock-specific news and updates on the other side of this break when we return, so you stay tuned. Hi there, welcome back. Thanks so much for staying tuned to Market Cafe. Before we move on to some stock-related news and updates, let's just quickly shift focus back to the Asian market. Take a look at what Nikkei is up to. As of now, almost 3% higher. Just a few minutes ago, it was gaining by 1,000 points. So that's a massive intraday uptick coming in for Nikkei today. Remember, PPI slightly lower than expectations, but the semiconductor stocks are leading all the gains in Nikkei today. But shifting focus back home, let's talk about all the stocks that could be potential buzzers in today's trading session. Let me take it across to my colleague Ria, who's joining us bright and early with just that list. Ria, good morning.
Yes, good morning. So let's take a look at the stocks that are going to be in focus today. Now, first up, a big block deal is expected on Honasa Consumer at a size of 2.63 crore shares, which represents 10.8% of the equity. Now, the deal size has been upped to rupees 1,679 crores from the earlier 1,261 crores, and the price is expected to be rupees 480, which is an 8% discount to the current market price. Now, the sellers are expected to be Sequoia Capital, Fireside Ventures, Stellaris Ventures and some others as well, and there's a 60-day lock-in period for these sellers, and the bankers for this issue are Kotak and Jefferies, so we're definitely keeping an eye out on Honasa. On the back of this news, we also have Brigade Enterprises today. So Brigade has, the Brigade Group in fact has announced the launch of its premium flexible and managed workspace solution called Buzzworks in Hyderabad at the Auro Orbit in High Tech City with a floor plate of 25,000 square feet, and Brigade is also aiming to expand to 1 million square feet of flexible office space over the next 2 years, so keeping an eye out on Brigade as well. We also have Nazra Tech in focus today after they've announced an investment in Stan, which is a leading gaming community platform in India, and this acquisition is being done through the company's wholly owned subsidiary called Nazra Dubai, and the acquisition is going to be for 15.86% stake for rupees 18.4 crores or USD $2.2 million in an all-cash secondary transaction. We also have Lupin in focus today, since the company has signed an agreement to acquire up to 42.61% stake in Sunshore Solar Park 17 Private Limited, which operates in the renewable energy segment for captive use, and this is to be acquired at a total consideration not exceeding 105 million rupees. Lastly, we have Adani Ports in focus. Now, the company is going to develop a multi-purpose berth at Gujarat's Kandla port, and the company has incorporated a wholly owned subsidiary called DPA Container and Clean Cargo Terminal Limited that will carry out the operations at this berth. Now, in July of 2024, Adani Ports had received the LOI for the development and operations of this berth for a 30-year concession period, and the berth is 300 meters long and offers 5.7 million metric tons capacity annually, and it is likely to be commissioned in FY27, so definitely keeping an eye out on all of these stocks today.
Well, absolutely, Ria. Thank you so much for getting us that list of stocks that we should keep in focus today. Now, it was a bumper response for Bajaj Housing Finance's 6,600 crore IPO with total subscription of 64 times against the shares of offer. Remember, this is the first Bajaj Group IPO in 3 decades. The total bid amount for the issue has topped over 3.2 lakh crore rupees. In fact, we have Varun who's standing by with more details on this bumper response. Varun?
Definitely. So it was the first IPO of any Bajaj Group company after 3 decades, and the response that the company has got is really fabulous. If you look at the total subscription numbers, it was 63.61 times, and the QIB portion, look at that, it has been subscribed around 209 times. The retail subscription was around 7.04 times, and the shareholders portion, which was most watched upon, it was subscribed around 17.53 times. If you look at the amount of total subscription, the company got, including anchor investor, 3.25 lakh crore. The overall issue size was 6,500 crores. Against that, the company has received bid for around 3.25 lakh crore, and even in this, the QIB portion, look at that, they have bid for around 2.6 lakh crore. So that is massive. The overall, if you look the retail portion, it was around 15,000 crores of bid that the retail has given. other than that, one more thing that you need to note over here is the number of applications that this IPO has received. Around 88.94 lakh applications have been received for the IPO, which is also the highest in the history of IPO. So the IPO has got good response, many records have been created, and now everyone is waiting for the listing. Probably analysts on the street are expecting that a good listing you can expect next week.
Varun, thank you so much for taking us through that. Well, taking a look at the way this IPO has been subscribed, Varun, definitely a good listing is what the street is watching out for. But let me also take it across to my colleague Gaurav, who's standing by with a list of all the stocks that brokerages are flagging off this morning. Gaurav, brokerages seem to be very active this morning because it seems to be a very long list of stocks today.
Well, yes. First, let's talk about some of the OMCs because Investec has now hiked the target price for them. So, first, let's talk about IOCL where they have hiked the target price to 120 rupees. For BPCL, they have hiked the target price for 250 rupees while maintaining sell rating on both the stocks. And for HPCL, while maintaining the hold rating, they have actually hiked the target price to 400 rupees per share. What they believe is that OMCs could see higher profits because of the marketing margins which can increase further. They also believe that there is potential for government intervention given that the Maharashtra state governments are also there which could hinder this profit, and because there is some uncertainty, they have maintained some sell rating on these stocks. Let's talk about Zomato because UBS has maintained buy rating with a target price of 320 rupees, and this is on the back of the monthly update that if I received in terms of the volume growth. So industry volume has shown a growth of around 2.5% on a month-on-month basis. And when we talk about Zomato versus Swiggy, now what UBS has said is that the push and pull has continued in Q2 FY25 as well, but what they're estimating is that Zomato can actually increase their GMV almost by 7% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, and that is why they have maintained their buy rating on Zomato. Lastly, let's also watch out for Cholamandalam Investments because Jefferies, while maintaining buy rating, increased the target price to 1800 rupees, which was earlier was at 1685 rupees. What they believe is that company has a strong auto loan franchisee and company is also moving towards non-auto loans. They have NIMS tailwinds because they have a rate cycle benefit. The company is a rate cycle beneficiary. And also, when we talk about Cholamandalam, what Jefferies believe is that they have stable credit quality, which can actually help them to increase their ROA almost by 20 to 30 bips. And on the back of this, they are being very bullish on the company. So definitely watching out on all these counters on the back of the brokerage note that we have received today.
Absolutely. So those are the counters that we should keep an eye on, and there's a host of other counters that the brokerages are also talking about. So lots on brokerage radar this morning. When you take a look at what CLSA had to say about PB Fintech, they're talking about how there's continued strong growth in health insurance, and that is something that they're highlighting. They're also talking about how there's mid-teen to 20% market share in retail as well as standalone insurers, and that is something that they're also flagging. Now, in terms of their expectations, then they're expecting 30% CAGR in premiums over 3 to 5 years. And that's what they have in mind. And they're also talking about how there's an uptick in health segment to aid growth in the near term. So that's also the verdict coming in on PB Fintech from CLSA. But let's also get you some more news and updates then. And Tata Steel is the one that will remain in focus today because Tata Steel signed a £500 million grant funding agreement with the UK government to support its €1.25 billion green steel project at Port Talbot in Wales as well. Ashisha is standing by in the studio to tell us a little more about this, Ashisha.
Well, absolutely. So Tata Steel will get about £500 million from the UK government, and it will be investing the balance £750 million, which makes a total of £1.25 billion for the project that they have announced. Remember, this deal was already announced in January this year, but there was some uncertainty because of the change in UK government, but now that overhang is out of the way, and hence this is a positive. This will reduce UK's industrial carbon emissions by about 8%. So this is a clear green transition project, and hence it is an important development that has come in for the company. As far as the progress and timeline is concerned, basic engineering has now been completed. Construction will commence in July next year, and production is expected to commence within a period of 3 years. We also have a Morgan Stanley note that has come in where they are maintaining their underweight stance on the stock with a target price of 135. They believe this is a positive development. Limited clarity on renewed discussions with the government has been an overhang for quite some time now, but now that is out of the way. We await clarity on whether there is additional financial support for affected employees. Remember, there was some news about strikes being undertaken by the employees, but now perhaps we need some more clarity on that front as well. No additional project cost is also an added positive. So yes, and it's an important step in the right direction. Quantum
quantum and the details were already known, but now the deal has been signed, and that's a positive.
Okay, so positive news flow coming in for Tata Steel. Let's see how that stock performs in today's trade. But on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Market Cafe. From Shan, Simi and the team that put this show together, thanks so much for watching. But as we bid you goodbye, you stay tuned to the channel because the market takes all the action forward.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.